In the United States, tens of thousands of people have been fleeing New Orleans to escape what's being called the storm of the century. Roads out of the city have been crammed with traffic, with the authorities urging residents to evacuate immediately. Hurricane Gustav has already left a trail of destruction across the Caribbean, killing more than 80 people. It's expected to hit the U.S. Gulf Coast on Monday. From New Orleans, Matthew Price reports.
For 2 days, they have been pouring out of New Orleans, a city on the move once more. At the central station, there is only one destination, away from here. 3 years ago, they survived Hurricane Katrina. Now they're being forced out again. Among them, we found Karen Frank. Katrina destroyed her last home. She showed us the keys to her new place. She got them only yesterday.
This hurt. I'm trying to be strong for my children, but it's hard. Because I really was, looking forward to finally getting settled back home.
Forecasters don't know exactly where Gustav will hit, nor how strong it will be. But the Louisiana coast and New Orleans are in the projected path. The authorities are determined this time to get everyone out, just in case, which is why the city's mayor is pulling no punches.
You need to be concerned, and you need to get your butts moving out of New Orleans right now. This is the storm of the century.
The National Guard is now deployed across the city. A curfew has been imposed from sunset to sunrise. The authorities say anyone defying it will be arrested. And at a later press conference, while the mayor didn't repeat his dire hurricane prediction, he did say this.
Looting will not be tolerated. We have doubled the police force, doubled the National Guard force that we had for Katrina, and looters will go directly to jail.
Most have heeded the warnings, including the city's remaining tourists heading for the last flights out. This is becoming a ghost town. In the coming hours, New Orleans will find out whether it has indeed learnt the lessons of Katrina. It's not just the hurricane force winds of Gustav that are the problem. It is also the storm surge that accompanies those winds. They have rebuilt some of the levees, but once again, if these don't hold, much of this city will be underwater. And once again, it will be the poor and the vulnerable of New Orleans who suffer the most. Like 3 years ago, all they can do is pack up and pray. Matthew Price, BBC News, New Orleans.
That Hurricane Gustav is no longer expected to reach a Category 4 strength before hitting the U.S. Gulf Coast. It's now expected to have top winds of 127 miles an hour. That's just over 200 kilometres per hour. That is a Category 3 strength on the 5-stage scale when it comes to makes landfall in the United States. So a little line on that. Slightly less intense than expected a few hours ago, but still nevertheless very strong. A Category 3 when it makes landfall. That is according to the U.S. National Hurricane Center. Well, President Bush has cancelled plans to travel to the Republican Party convention in Minnesota, with the White House saying he'll focus on Hurricane Gustav instead. And North America editor Justin Webb reports from Washington.
Hurricane Katrina changed everything. Its immediate impact, of course, was on the Gulf Coast and the people who lived there, but the effects of the storm did not stop in New Orleans and the surrounding areas. These images of people fending for themselves, of a government response as overwhelmed as the city itself, were a calamity for the Bush administration and the Republican Party. The president simply made it worse by flying over the devastation on his way back to Washington from a fundraising event. It was the moment the nation turned against this man and his party. So today he had another chance, and he needed to get it right.
This storm is dangerous. There's a real possibility of flooding, storm surge, and high winds. Therefore, it is very important for you to follow the instructions and direction of state and local officials. Do not put yourself in harm's way or make rescue workers take unnecessary risks.
New Orleans is Louisiana's largest city. It lies on the edge of Lake Pontchartrain, with the Mississippi River flowing through the center. Much of New Orleans lies below sea level, leaving it vulnerable to flooding. The city has a system of canals and levees topped with concrete floodwalls to keep the water out. They were designed to withstand a Category 3 hurricane. But when Katrina struck, they were quickly overwhelmed. Within 24 hours, 80% of the city was flooded. Nearly 2,000 people were killed in the city and surrounding areas. Tens of thousands were made homeless. The fear is that the whole dreadful saga is going to be repeated this time. Once again, local people will return to find devastation. Though, crucially, the emergency relief teams are claiming to be much better organised.
There's no question that we're doing much better than we did in Katrina. If you look at the evacuation, it's begun a whole 24 to 36 hours earlier than Katrina. The preparations for people with medical needs, people without automobiles, I think we've already seen the benefit of that.
Even if the storm this time is less devastating, the images from 3 years ago are not those the Republicans would have chosen as a backdrop to their convention. It is a reminder to the nation of the loss in Katrina and of the botched response. Republicans need desperately to convince America that their party has changed and knows now what it needs to do.
Speaking in the last hour, the Republican nominee for the presidency, Senator John McCain, said he'd suspended most of the events of his first day of his convention because of Hurricane Gustav.
We'll pray for the best and prepare for the worst. So, of course, this is a time when we have to do away with our party politics and we have to act as Americans. We have to join with 300 million other Americans on behalf of our fellow citizens. It's a time for action. So we're going to suspend most of our activities tomorrow except for those absolutely necessary. Rick Davis, our campaign manager, will be coming on right after me to tell you about the details of it. But I know you agree with me. It's time to open our hearts, our efforts, our wallets, our concern, our care for those American citizens who are now under the shadow of the probability of a natural disaster.
Well, the BBC's Jonathan Beale is at the Republican convention in Minneapolis, St. Paul. I asked him how big a problem the hurricane presents for the Republicans.
Well, I mean, you know, in one sense, it's a real blow because you have this media spotlight, a big set-piece political event, and then suddenly a potential natural disaster is going to take away that focus. The media is going to be focusing very much on what's happening down in New Orleans and the Gulf Coast and the impact of Hurricane Katrina. That said, you know, this is an opportunity also for John McCain to show that he is different from President Bush, that the Republicans under him are going to be a very different party. His slogan here at this convention is country first, service. So he's going to try and use this opportunity, I'm sure they'd rather not have, but use this opportunity to show that they're a very different Republican Party from the one that was led by President Bush when he responded to Katrina. We know that John McCain himself said that response, not just by the federal government but also by local government, was a disgrace. And he believed that much more should have been done. And he will use this as an opportunity to show that he would be, if he were president, very different indeed.
Jonathan Beale. In other news, in the Indian state of Bihar, relief workers are trying to help millions of people affected by flooding. Hundreds of thousands of people remain without food in villages surrounded by water. There are chaotic scenes as stranded groups scramble to get on the small boats that can take them to safety, as Damien Grammaticus reports.
12 days into this disaster, and this is the first day rescue teams have reached this spot. Until now, people here have had to make their own escape from the floods.
Well, we're now heading to the village of Kaushala. These are volunteers coming to help rescue people. We're told there may be 1,000 people stuck here, but one of these boats can only take perhaps a dozen.
No wonder they were nervous about what lay ahead. At least 100 people were waiting in the water as we approached. Many have been stranded for over a week. The boat in front was immediately surrounded, a taste of things to come. As we pulled in, the crowd at first seemed calm. But then, within moments, it all changed. Everyone desperate to get to safety, trying to clamber onto the inflatable. Children crushed at the bottom as adults piled on top. No more people, someone shouts. No luggage. The boat is going to sink. But still they try to crowd on. The boat was about to be swamped. The driver desperate to get his colleagues' attention. Packed in like sardines, the boat already had double its capacity. Those unable to get on were furious. The government is a failure, a complete failure. We will all die here, shouted this one. Finally, we pulled away, leaving dozens of disappointed people behind. With no food or clean water, they'll have to wait for the next boat. The second inflatable was dangerously overloaded. Just look at how low it is in the water.
Well, you can see the kinds of problems they're having here. People are so desperate to get to safety. There are so many still left there. They're all hoping to get out, but there simply aren't enough boats to take everyone back to dry land.